So, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Secrets of the Viz. This week, we're doing a pilot episode to explore parallels between video game design and data viz in terms of narrative structure and UX UI, and how we can apply some of these cross learnings to make data visualization a bit more fun. Because similarly to video games, the more your business stakeholders are engaged, the better feedback loop between insights and actions. So for the new video games audience that are tuning this week, I'm Lois. I am a community leader in the Tableau space. I work visual analytics in 2K games where I create bespoke dashboards for our game titles. And today I have the honor of inviting Lucas, who is a CEO of a video game startup, Loreworx, to talk to us about what makes UI a good UX. So over to you, Lucas, to give a short intro about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Lucas Oliveri. I'm the CEO and the creative director at Loreworx. We are working on the mobile title, but we also have a YouTube channel where I make videos where I redesign game UIs. And so the AAA games that are coming out that are popular, I usually look at their UIs and I don't hold back. If I see something I don't like, I'm very vocal. And obviously, I play it up a little bit because it's YouTube. So, of course, you need to be a little dramatic. Not that I'm like this expert or anything, but I try to improve and redesign their UIs and try to make it as entertaining and educational as possible. And now we're branching out a little bit to not just game UI, also lore and game comparisons where I compare mechanics and stuff like that. My experience, I started as a modder. The first game that I modded was Civ City Rome that came out a long time ago, like 15, 20 years ago. I've always been a modder, and they've always been interface related. I'm not an expert at anything, but if there's one area in game development that I feel like I'm knowledgeable, it's usually interface and user experience. That is the one thing that I really love because I'm such a nitpicker. And as I tell people in my comment section, when they say, "Oh, that's such a nitpick," I go, "Well, good UI is a collection of nitpicks. That's what it is." And, I started Loreworx because I was working on a mod for Tabletop Simulator with my best friend, who's a programmer. I'm more of a designer. And after dozens of hours working on this mod that would help us play Dungeons and Dragons online with our friends, we just said, hey, why don't we just make our own game? It's been a few years now. And while we're doing that, I've also been working on building our YouTube community so that we can pressure investors a little bit more. And so that's kind of my history.
It sounds amazing. So I know you talk a little bit about your startup. So maybe give us a little bit of elevator pitch on the game.
Right. So UniKaos is an idea that I had because I worked in the education industry as a teacher. I worked with 8-year-olds to 16-year-olds, and they've always told me that they hated school. And I was like, well, you don't say that to your teacher, first of all. But let me get to the bottom of this, right? And there was, I don't like homework. I don't like that kind of stuff. I want to go home and I want to play FIFA. That's what I want to do. It's like, okay, I get that. We've all been like that. That made me think, what if there was a FIFA that taught you something? And that's not an education game because those are built to teach and then they entertain you as a bonus. It's kind of like an afterthought. No one has ever wanted to play an education game. You're forced to in class. But as soon as you go home, you want to play Roblox. No one has ever made a Roblox and then thought, now let's see if it can teach something. I'm talking like actual teaching right on the nose. And so UniKaos was built to entertain first. It's the first action trivia game. You answer trivia questions during action gameplay, which has never been done before. We're trying to mix two genres that honestly, if before we started working on this game, you would have said, oh, that sounds like water and oil. You can't mix action and trivia. It makes no sense because you stop the action to ask a question. And so it's, I believe, the first game that successfully does that. It's for mobile, it's free to play. And the reason why it's for mobile is because our target audience is 8 to 16-year-olds. I know that console and PC players like me don't like to admit this, but it just happens to be by far the most popular platform or device that age range uses to play games. We want to reach as many kids as possible. So that's why it's for mobile.
So as a parent of two daughters, I totally get where you're coming from because I have a hard time teaching them math, English, all the other
Right.
subjects in a fun way. And I think when people have fun doing things that they don't like, they go through the motion and something from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing too. It has to be fun. Number one thing is fun, addictive, entertaining. And so because of that, the learning is actually not very deep. It's intentionally shallow because we don't want it to be an education game. It's basically you're learning a lot less than you would learn by playing Math Blaster. But it's just that because it's so entertaining, hopefully you will play for a much longer time and you won't feel like you're going to school. And hopefully after some time, you start associating learning things like math and geography and science with something that is fun and makes you like the subject even more. So that's the strategy there.
I remember being a kid, I was forced to play education games as well. And those were not fun at all.
No, no. There was like one or two of them that was fun. I remember like Carmen San Diego was fun, I think. When
Carmen
I
San
was,
Diego was good.
yeah. And there was another one that was like this typing game. You had to type really fast. It was meant to teach you how to type fast. And those are the two that I remember that I had fun with. But other than that, it was like, all right, can we play SimCity now?
So let's jump into our main topic for today. In your
Absolutely.
experience, what makes a UI a good UX?
Right. If you want to get in depth into that, first we have to define what they are, right? So UI is user interface. It's basically everything that is visual on screen that is not part of a game world or a character. Usually it's in 2D and stuff that you see that we interact with. UX is user experience, how you interface with the game. You just have to be careful not to mix that up with game design because sometimes people mix that up with game design. Game design and UX are two different things. As an example, save systems. Let's say you created a game and you want to allow players to save whenever they want. And so you're going to have auto saves. That's basically a checkpoint system. You're also going to allow manual saves anytime they want. So that includes during combat, out of combat, like if enemies are nearby, you're going to allow that to be done at any point. Perfect. That is game design. If I go, I'm not going to allow this during the battle, that's a game design decision. How you save is UX. And so you can be playing a game that allows you to save anytime you want. But can I use F5 to quick save and F9 to quick load? That's UX. Are you going to limit my save slots? Can I only have 20 saves and then I have to start overwriting saves? That's UX. And so there's a difference there that is very, very important, but they're all interconnected, right? So the short answer to that question is comfort. It's just one word, comfort. Good UX is not something you notice. Bad UX is something you notice. So it's almost like in soccer, you only notice the goalkeeper if he does something bad. It's the same with UX. If you don't notice it, it's excellent. For the untrained eye, you don't know why it's so bad, but you feel something. And if you feel something because of your experience with the game, then it's just bad UX. In a more physical example, I'm mainly a PC player. But if you were to imagine from the top down, you were looking at a PC player, the right hand is on the mouse and the left hand is usually on the WASD area of the keyboard. Okay. If I design a keybind that forces me to move my hand to the right, it's like in no man's land in the middle of the keyboard, bad UX. So right now, for PC players, there's a modern UX trend that is using just the mouse to navigate through game screens, so using the right mouse button to go back instead of before you would use escape or tab on the left hand. And so I'm playing a game right now, Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon, for a video that we're going to make. They actually implemented the right mouse button to go back to some screens, but not all of them. So that's one thing that I would be talking about is like, why haven't you done this for everything? It's all about comfort. You don't want your hands to go anywhere, right? And for the gamepad, it's the same thing. When I play console games, PlayStation and Xbox, A and B are the same. They perform the same function. Back is B and whatever shape that is for the PlayStation. It's the same button though. If you play on the Nintendo Switch, A and B are switched. I didn't mean to use switch so many times there, but it is switched. And so as soon as you grab that controller, you're doing everything you don't want to do unintentionally until muscle memory starts retraining itself and being, no, no, this is how you go back. It's like the other button, right? And this is all muscle memory that comes from so many years of just market tendencies, like pinching to zoom on your phone. That is second nature. Everyone does that. Even my grandfather does that. So you can't just go changing these things and then expect people to like your game, you know?
There's a lot to digest. And what is interesting to me is a lot of points that I saw recurring in your video that you did for Monster Hunter Wilds is the idea about intuitiveness that is built over years. Because like you said, PC players, they are very used to having WASD as the movement because it goes all the way back to Counter-Strike times. And even things like iconography versus text. If people don't understand or don't recognize those icons, you're going to make them even more confused, right? And also the predictability of it. You raise the point of there's this recent tab that basically changes every time you navigate
Oh,
to it.
man. Monster Hunter just drove me nuts because the game itself, it just doesn't deserve that UX, you know? Like the gameplay is so addictive, it's so fun. The monster hunting is so fun, but you have to deal with this criminal user experience. It really is just incredibly, I get worked up when I talk about that UX. It's not really the UI itself. The UI has some problems, of course, but the UX is just horrific. Like, oh, it's a Monster Hunter game. It's co-op. You're thinking, okay, I want to connect with my friend. How do I do that? I haven't done this with a AAA game in a very, very long time, but that was the first in such a long time that I actually had to Google and read a guide on how to connect with my friend. It was not simple at all. And then all these issues that you have, you talked about intuitiveness, which is something the market helps build over time, right? You mentioned WASD. Well, the PC example that I like to give is R reloads. If you make a PC game with shooting and R doesn't reload, you're an idiot. You're not reinventing the wheel. You're ruining your game. Everyone expects R to reload. Spacebar jumps. That's how it is. That's like a law of the world. But here comes Oblivion. And how do you jump in Oblivion? With E? Why? You know, like what was Bethesda thinking back then? And so all of these is actually still a problem today that drives me nuts.
I agree with you. There are times where you want to invent something new, but for the fundamental gameplay or core mechanics, stick with what people know. That would,
Absolutely.
yeah, because like you said, it's comfort.
Yeah, it is. It's intuitiveness. There's something that is very, very important in mobile gaming because all games are free to play on mobile. And we call it the FTUE, right? It's the first time user experience. It's so much more important in mobile than it is for console gaming because if you're paying $70 for a game, you can go to a tutorial and spend 30 minutes learning how to play a game because you made an investment. With mobile, there is no investment other than just hitting download. That's your investment right there. So if the player can't just grab the phone and start playing, you lost the player. Your retention takes a big drop, and retention in mobile gaming is absolutely king. Right. And so, as someone who has been working on a mobile game, when I see a game for console that tries to be crazily different, I usually cringe a little bit because you're only doing this because you have so much money. Like they can take these risks, but there are things that boggle the mind. I know you told me that your favorite UI was Persona 5, right? I never played any of the Atlas games. The first Atlas game that I played was Metaphor because I was going to make a video on it. And the UI in Metaphor is absolutely genius in terms of it being so creative, so beautiful to look at, right? But where they drop the ball is in the most basic of UX rules. And I just don't understand because it's such a basic thing. If I write something that I want you to read, I can't have an animated background behind the text because it's going to give me a headache. I see game developers reinventing how you show subtitles, and I don't get that either. We've been doing subtitles since, I don't know, silent films. Even though they didn't say anything, you had these title cards in the movie theater. That's subtitling. We've been doing this forever. That's one of the issues with the UX in Clair Obscur. Though I think that game is game of the year. They have the subtitling and then they put it on a frosted glass background, which just makes things worse. And I'm thinking, just give it character outline and the shadow and call it a day. Go work on something else. These things that are super basic, it really grinds my gears.
Definitely. I think the points you brought up about metaphor is very interesting because metaphors, design styles is heavily influenced by Persona 5. It's very stylized, it's very loud. It gets you right into the action, especially when it comes to the battle. Like you feel that adrenaline rush when you're just going through the menus, and there's a lot of feedback that comes back from the interactions in the game. But like you said, in your video, when there's time to be calm, we need the UI to incite that feeling of calmness and not
Yeah.
have chaos throughout the game.
Exactly. And I use a heart rate monitor to exemplify that, especially in a turn-based game. I think is already calmer than what people are used to. You could call it a niche almost, like a subgenre of RPGs. And so there's a trend in turn-based RPGs of making the combat feel a little bit more interactive. And Clair Obscur does this incredibly well with quick time events, amazing animation, and then making you manually parry things. And it's just excellent what they do. Metaphor allows you to kill enemies without ever going into turn-based combat. However, when that combat ends, there's a time that you have to go, all right, now it's time for my heartbeat to go down a little bit. When you're reading dialogue or when you're watching a cutscene or when you're in the menus just selecting stuff, that's not when the heart rate needs to go up. That's when it needs to come down. You're idling. And metaphor, at least for me, it was the first game in a long time that actually gave me a headache in reading because of the animations. It was these patterns, these paintbrush splatter patterns that would cycle very rapidly. And that is just not a comfortable reading experience, especially in the game that wasn't entirely voice acted. There was no voice, and you'd be like, oh crap, I need to read that. I mean, I love what Atlas does with the interface. It is incredibly creative. They just need somebody to bring them back a little bit. They crossed the line just a little bit.
So I think the main difference between Persona 5 and Metaphor, even though both of them have animation behind, is that Metaphor loses a bit of the uniformity. Whereas for Persona, it's very hard shapes. It's like triangles. There's a form of structure to it.
Yeah, these are things that you have to think of when you're designing UX. Are you causing discomfort? Do you have screens that transition from a lighter screen to a darker screen or vice versa? If you have too many of those, people are going to have eye strain playing your game. The easiest thing that I can say to people is just pick a game that has great UX and copy it beat for beat. It doesn't matter. Everyone copies everybody in the industry, and then make your own game. It's all about the UX. If the UI looks great, don't get me wrong, it's awesome. It's like a bonus. It's the cherry on top. No one's ever complained about like, oh, this UI looks so bad. I don't like this game. No, they can say the UI looks bad, but they're not going to say, I don't like this game because the UI looks bad.
So what I'm getting from this is in relation to how we can actually translate some of these learnings to data visualization is that we need to tap onto the common minds of people, like what works. Where do we put the home button? Where do we put the back button? All those are important because if you try to do anything that is out of the ordinary, people would get lost. They will get confused. They don't know what to do with the dashboard. The other recurring theme that I'm picking up is that comfort in terms of readability. Things like colors, contrast is very important, especially when you're presenting numbers that are important to your business stakeholders. You don't want a yellow text on a red that doesn't do any good. That's going to impede people's takeaway. So I think there's a lot of cool things that we can apply in terms of video game design principles. And I'm happy that we had this chat about this.
I could go on forever, and I just love talking about this stuff. It's very nerdy, very nitpicky.
Well, I'm in the video games industry, so I can relate to all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. But at least for me anyway, when I talk about game design or when I'm evaluating games that I play, it's usually the little details that make a game great, that show me the love and attention that the developers are putting into the game, right?
So I think the key takeaway for us in terms of learning in parallels across industry is that always build for comfort, always make sure that the important things are readable. So thank you again, Lucas, for sharing that treasure trove of knowledge. I think there's a lot that the data visualization community can learn from this. And I'm really glad that I had this conversation with you. We'll see everyone at the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you very much.